Welcome to part 3 of the PT331 SEC Air operator training. I'm Max Allen from Graphic Wizards, and in this section we're going to be walking through blade setup on the inside of the machine and a little bit of maintenance. This is going to be part 3 of probably 5 totals. So after this one, once we know how to adjust our blade side to side, we'll have one more section talking about setting up the touchscreen, how I program new jobs, and then the final being increasing perforating and just kind of some general file setup stuff. So if you have any questions after this, then reach out to your local dealer or reach out to Graphic Wizard directly as well, and I would be happy to give you a hand. So from that tool bag that we saw a little bit earlier, I have a couple of different tools, and the one I'm going to be using in this case is this T-handle hex key. Okay. My blades inside the machine, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Okay. And inside number 1 here, I have 2 blades, an upper and a lower. Inside number 2, I have 2 sets of blades with a 3/8 gap. Same thing in number 3, and then on number 4, just a single blade again. And so depending on the job setup that I'm doing in business cards, I'm going to be using all 4 of these blades. I'm going to have my outside cutting. I'm going to have my 2 blades in the middle doing a centered gutter. But if I was doing something that's only 2 across the sheet, only 2 columns, right, like a greeting card or a tent card, then I'm just going to push one of these blades to the outside. I could use number 2 to do my outside cutting here, number 3 in the middle, number 4 on the outside. Okay, so depending on the job that you're doing, you're going to move these blades back and forth across the machine. And we do have a couple of jobs that are preset for you already. Right, so if you're looking on the feeder side right now, assuming you're watching this video sitting in front of the machine, if you are not, we'll give you a quick view. Apologies for the mess in the background here. That's my in-feed sticker. Okay, so all this is showing you, there isn't a whole lot you need to know, but my paper size, I can move my reader. Okay, so this is just for my register mark to compensate for any digital image shift. And then I have my color coding here, designating that red is for 3.5-inch wide cards and that the green is going to be for 5.5-inch wide. Okay, so 2 different pre-setups for you, just so we can really help with a couple of common jobs. And then outside of that, we're going to be setting things up ourselves and creating our own templates as you need them. Okay? So this isn't, kind of a one-size-fits-all machine where you have to just run our templates here. We do have some options where we can create our own work as well. And let's just get it set there. Okay, perfect. So on each of these slitting heads, I have a set screw on the inside that is on a round metal hub. Okay. When these are attached to the machine, I can turn the outside knob on the top, and this will shift all of my blades left to right. So if you are set up for a job already, tighten those blades down, right, to make sure that they don't shift side to side, and then we can make some micro adjustments side to side without a whole lot of effort, right? Just a really, really easy switch. I don't have to worry about the feeder, just shift my blades over a little bit. Right. To move each of the blades, I just loosen off the set screw on the bottom, and when you're tightening that set screw back up, making sure to go relatively gently. If you start to create divots in your bar, it's going to be a lot harder for these to move back and forth. You may have to use some Scotch-Brite or something and clean that bar up so that you can slide these side to side. Right, we want you to have this machine, be able to use it for a very long time. So just make sure that when you're tightening these things up, snug, so they're not going to slide to side, not so tight, and that you're going to start to create bumps in the bottom shaft with the screws as I tighten them down. Okay, so when I was talking 3.5-inch versus 5.5-inch beforehand, if you look inside your machine, I'm going to do my best here. It will be a little bit hard to see. On this bottom shaft that these are attached to, you can see where I have my set screws. There are red and green indicators. So when I'm doing a 3.5-inch wide job, I'm using the red. I will slide these back and forth until I see my red line aligned with the hub on the bottom. And once those are into position, you can feel a couple of spring-loaded bearings on the bottom. We'll drop those into place, and I know I'm in the right spot. Okay, likewise, when I'm doing my 5.5 inches, I move the number 1 slitter out of the way, and I will slide the number 2 over to my green line in the middle, number 3 to the green line in the center, and then number 4 to the green line on the outside. Okay, and as a reminder, like I said, that label is on the in feed of the machine so that you can see these things and follow along. And so very, very simple process. So you can see here that I've got my 3.5 inch wide. So I tend to try to use the same setup as much as possible. If I'm going to do a business card, it's 3.5 by 2. If I'm going to do a ticket, it will be 3.5 by 8 or 7 with a perforation on it. If you're doing fold over cards and things like that, as much as possible, try to use your 3.5 or your 5.5 inch wide cards. And that means that you can use the templates that are inside the machine already. It's going to be much, much simpler for you to set up because we have those indentations in there for you. And it's very, very easy to do. For more information on file setup, I'm going to go through this. But make sure you reach out to Graphic Wizard if you need help creating templates. If you have questions, refer back to your manual page so that you know your limitations on the machine. And then outside of that, it should be relatively simple for us to set these jobs up and create custom jobs as well. All right, so I've just shown you 3.5 to 5.5, and I'll slide it right back again. So there's my number 4, number 3, number 2, and number 1. And then I use my hex key and I tighten these back into position. When they're in the indentations, they don't move around all that often. If you're doing a custom job, so if I'm setting up something else, set up your file, right, in your design software, making sure that you have that 3/8 gutter every time that you're setting it up, right? You do have to follow our gutters here, otherwise it's not going to work for you. But what I recommend is you do your file setup. Then once you've done that, use indicators on the top of the machine, use a blank template, and I just go like this. That was an operator error there. So you'll take your time when you're doing these types of things. And I now have a blade guide for a different job, right? So you can, once you set up a new job for the first time, it's going to be a little bit more tedious than a totally automated machine like our larger models. But once you have these created, then I can tell the machine that this is a 3.5 inch wide template. Tell the machine, write it down yourself. This is my 3.5 inch wide template, cut this. I've got some people that will make magnets to put inside the machine to do this. Some people just write them right onto the guide on the bottom there, or create them out of plastic or metal, have them machine shopped. But really all you need is something so that you can slide it in underneath there and move your blades into position. Once you've run a job successfully the first time, as long as you have those indicators on the machine, then you will know where to put your job the next time. Right, so that way, anything that you're doing that is predictable and repetitive, if you know you're going to do it again, you're going to do it all the time, we can save those jobs into the memory, and then we can create a template here that we can use to set up our slitting blades. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Right, so if I want to use this one, the next time I set it up, I just make sure number 1's here, number 2's here, 3, 4, and then I tighten them down and I'm ready to go when I want to do something that's a little bit more custom. Okay, so this isn't the most, let's say, advanced process, right? It's very, very simple. It's just a simple way that we can start to create more value out of the machines. If you're not going to use those 3.5 and 5.5, like I recommended, try to use those as much as possible because it's going to be easier for you to set up. Okay, inside my slitting assembly here, I've got a couple of things that I need to worry about. Okay, so my blades, if you get James inside there, reach out. We have a separate video on taking these things apart and cleaning them out that I can forward along. Not something that you need to worry about during your initial operator training. And of course, we have technicians that are local to almost everybody who can come in there and do this process for you, especially the first time if you're not 100% comfortable. On the in-feed side, I have a roller here, 2 rollers right on the back side of my slitting blades, and then 2 rollers on either side of my creasing blade. So all of these rollers are a rubber. You can see that mine look very clean here. They should be pretty much a solid black. As I start to cut and start to create more paper dust inside the machine, they're going to go a little bit white and my registration will get worse. Okay, so these are spring loaded. They have tension to them to make sure that they're squeezing my stock as hard as possible. But if you start to use, a heavy linen stock or something that is chipping and cracking a lot, and you get a lot of paper dust inside the machine, or let's say you have a fuser issue on your digital machine and it's coating your rollers, you're going to have a really hard time holding your stock into registration when it's like that, so that you'll have to make sure that you clean these things off as you start to use the machine more and more to keep it clean. Right? If you're having a registration issue, if you're running something like a business card and it looks like it's slipping inside the machine, and you call Graphic Wizard, which we encourage you to do, the first thing we're going to ask you is, are your rollers clean? Okay, so to do that, I'll walk you through it very, very quickly. It is a simple process. I'm just going to use a paper towel or a lint-free rag, something that isn't going to leave residue or fibers on my rollers, because I don't want things, external to the machine getting caught up inside my blades, creating more problems. I will remove my lag kit assembly. So you can see here, I'm just removing 2 thumb screws. And then I have these front thumb screws here, here, and here that are attached to rollers. This is creating pressure on the middle row. So this is going to stay inside the machine all of the time unless I'm doing my cleaning. And when you put it back on, just make sure these are nice and tight so that it's doing its job. Okay, so this is going to stay in the center. It's just I have spring loaded from the outside that's keeping pressure on my rollers, and having the extra pressure in the center will make sure that my center row of cards, when I'm doing things like 3.5 inch wide greeting cards, isn't going to move at all. We have a number of different cleaners, and there's going to be one shipping with the machine. That's called a Graphic Wizard Rubber Roller Rejuvenator. It's an aerosol can. In just 1 second, I'll show you. This one. If you get toner, anything stuck on the machine or on your rollers that you cannot remove, that is what I'm going to use. But for the most part, your daily cleaning or weekly, depending on your volume, I'm going to use something like this. This is just an environmental water-based cleaner. Squeeze it onto my rollers here, or onto my paper towel, and then I wipe the rollers. Okay. If I reach inside the machine, being very, very careful not to touch blades. Most of these things are exposed, but it's metal in there, and we don't want you to cut yourselves touching something like the points here that are sharp. So slide your blades out of position, and if I pinch my rollers, I can rotate the rollers inside the machine, right, so that I can get to the ones on the bottom. The alternative, and I can show you that when we start running jobs through, I'll show you a clear jam. But if a sheet gets stuck inside the machine, if I hold a sheet to cover one of my sensors, it will give me a forward and reverse button to clear that jam, push the sheets in or out of the machine. And I can use that to spin my rollers versus reaching inside the machine and twisting it myself. Okay, but this is going to be the easiest job. It's really, really quick to switch it over, and it turns all of the rollers at the same time. So just grab the top and the bottom and pull them towards each other. Okay, and I'm going to do that, get to the top and the bottom, and from the bottom of the machine, being very, very careful again to avoid any metal parts that may look sharp. The blade, again, has guides on it, so I can't get my hands inside there unless I'm really, really trying. It is a safe unit, but because it is a finishing piece of machinery designed to do cutting, you're going to be very, very careful with your hands. If you reach up from the bottom, you can get the bottom rollers as well. Okay, and that's something that we're worrying about a little bit further down the line, not something that you would have to do right away. All right, so once my machine is clean, I'm going to put my lag kit back on, right, keeping it centered on the machine, centered out of those 3 holes, and tighten it back down. And that's the whole cleaning process. You'll notice across the machine, you see things like this, which is a little micro switch. So if you see any exposed wires, it is either an electronic eye that's looking for my sheet as it goes through, so the machine can tell you if there's a paper jam. It may be the case that at some point you see a roller under here that you haven't cleaned, or you see that there's a paper buildup somewhere, or the machine is telling you that there's a paper jam and you don't think there is. From time to time, just cleaning these rubber rollers will keep the registration good. But if I have too much paper dust build up inside, one of these electronic eyes could be covered in dust, thinking that it's paper instead of just a bunch of debris and stuff that's stuck on the eye. So if you take a can of compressed air and along anywhere where you see red and purple wires, here, there's one underneath here, there's another one underneath here, and you blow those out, the machine is going to have an easier time seeing things, and we can walk you through that process if you need it as well. Okay, but that's something that should be few and far between, and really only if you're doing a lot of substrates that are creating a lot of paper dust. Right, machine does have to be closed when you're running it, because I do have a micro switch here. So if the machine is open, it will not run. You gotta make sure you keep everything closed, keep it safe, including the doors on the front of the machine, like this one here. The machine's not going to operate unless if anything is open, anything's exposed. So make sure you keep the covers closed and we won't have any issues. Last thing I'm going to show you on the inside before we go to part 4, which is going to be our programming, is on the outside of my machine. And we'll do the top first, is my pressure for my creasing or perforating die. Okay, the machine has both options. Not standard, the perforation is an option. So when the machine shows up, it will have the crease die in. And in part 1, I believe I showed you the perforation die location on the front of the machine underneath the feeder. That's right here. So if you did purchase this option, that's where it's going to be. If you don't have that option now and you would like it, reach out to your local dealer, reach out to us directly, and we can get one sent out to you as well. It does make a huge difference in terms of the versatility of the machine, because now I'm not only doing folding, making sure that I don't have any toner cracking, but I can do perforations too. So that I can do tickets and coupons and other things, just diversifying your offerings a little bit. Now on the front of the machine, this little door, like I said, it's going to have to stay closed while the machine is in operation. Sorry for moving around so much here. But I have my 2-piece die set. If I just pull those dies right out, I can take out my creasing die and put in my perforation die. Okay, the creasing, male and female, I can put this inside the machine either way. There's no limitation. The perforation die, the rubber pad will have to go on the bottom. Okay, so when you do switch to perforating, make sure that the rubber is on the bottom facing up. You can't put the dies in upside down, right? But you can put the teeth when I'm moving my perforation on the bottom, the rubber on the top, and it will be much more likely to jam. So when I'm done that, if I'm swapping out, I'll put my bottom die back in, slide it to the back, and you'll hear a click. And then do the same thing with the top. This is a 2-piece die system, so you're going to slide both of them. Okay, so that's how I remove my dies and put them back in. Again, it does have to have that click. If you don't have them in all the way, it's not going to operate. The machine will just tell you that there's an issue with your creasing die or that you don't have one installed. Now, once you're doing your creasing, if you notice that it's cracking a little bit when you're doing folding on a heavyweight stock, or if you're not perforating through your sheet all the way so that it doesn't tear cleanly, I'm going to use one of those Allen keys that I've sent with the machine, and I will simply do a quarter turn at a time and turn those down, set screws on the top down or up based on the image on the sticker that I have there. Just give me 1 second. I'm grabbing my Allen keys here. Okay, so this is the one for my trays, adding all my tray extensions and tightening them up after. And then the slightly thicker one is for my die adjustment. Okay, so let's say that I want this to be a little bit lighter. I want to go clockwise. I'm just going to insert my Allen key and do a quarter turn, and then move to number 2. I'll do a quarter turn, and then number 3, do a quarter turn. Okay, put your Allen key like this as well if it's a little bit easier to turn for you. But we're going clockwise to make my pressure lighter. And if it's not deep enough and you notice it's still cracking, or like I said, the perforation isn't going through, then I'm going to put in my Allen key and I'm going to turn it a counter turn, just a quarter turn at a time, right? Run a test sheet and then I'll go start again. And I'm just going to turn it the other direction. Okay, so when you're testing your crease and perforation depth, just program a job, move your slitters out of the way that's just creasing and perforating, program a single crease so you can see the result, and then you can just reuse the same piece of paper until you get it set to a depth that you like. Right, this is something that we set at the factory, so you may not have to make this adjustment unless you're really going to the minimum or maximum of our specifications. And last thing you need to worry about on the outfeed, you can see my magnets here, but I do have sensors on the outfeed of the machine to tell the machine when there is a jam. So if you do see an outfeed sensor jam, just make sure there's nothing obstructing this. Like I said, a little bit of air inside the machine to make sure there's no dust on it if you are seeing a reoccurring error. And so I'm going to move my slitters back into position, and then I'll program a job of business cards, and we'll run a sheet through the machine. This is going to be part 4 next.